Clap. All right. Hello, this is Connor Turnbull with The Highway. I'm here with Chris. Chris, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name's Chris Holtzmeyer. I'm pretty much a lifelong resident of Evansville. Moved away for about 8 or 9 years, and lived in different places like Washington D.C. and Valparaiso, Indiana, Northwest Indiana, and Knoxville, Tennessee. Before moving back home, I was in church ministry for 20 years and found my way into law enforcement ministry full time about six years ago. So that's what I do for a living.
Nice. So I don't know if you necessarily said it, but how long have you been in Evansville and what kind of like drew you here? And then where did you find yourself before Evansville?
So I'm 51 years old. I'll be 52 in July. And so I was born and raised here and then went into the ministry in 2001. And then about 2004, we moved away. My wife and I moved away to Washington, D.C., and then we went up to Valparaiso, Indiana, and then moved down to Knoxville, Tennessee before making our way back home to Evansville. And a lot of that was, all of our family lives here. We had adopted our kids while we were away those 8 or 9 years, and then wanted to move back closer to home, and we were able to come back to Evansville, and kind of in a roundabout way, made my way into police chaplaincy.
Nice. From your perspective, how important is like transportation in your everyday job? I know you obviously go everywhere with a car, but like in general, how much are you moving out or around throughout the day, like throughout work?
Well, that's my primary mode of transportation is getting somewhere by vehicle, obviously. So you need to have for me, I go from agency to agency, police agency throughout the day, throughout the week, and then all kinds of different visits in between. And so I need to have safe and reliable transportation and vehicles. So I have a couple different cars that I can use. One is a 2013 Chevy Impala retired squad car. So those are chipped a little bit differently, and so that's a lot of fun to drive. And then when I have to load up different products and take them different places for events, or if I'm got a lunch, a lunch with a bunch of like a uh, leadership lunch with I've got to take some either food or supplies to for the event. Then I've got a Sorrento that has our logo and everything on it. So having reliable transportation
Hmm.
is important.
No, absolutely. And like obviously having like space with certain vehicles to be able to take stuff is super important. As a police officer, you deal with a lot of like traffic, obviously traffic stops and stuff. What would you say in Evansville are some of the most common traffic issues?
Distracted driving is the biggest one,
Mhm.
and honestly, we're all guilty of it,
Yes.
including officers, even in their personal lives. I think we're all guilty of it. We all, it's against the law in Indiana and probably most, if not every other state, to use your phone. I think you can use your phone to be able to, if you're mapping something, you're trying to find a map somewhere and listen in directions, and you're not supposed to be able to use it for anything else. But man, we're all guilty. We're all guilty of it. Doesn't make it right, but distracted driving, because there are a lot of rear end accidents and just people getting hit or hitting other people because and obviously a lot of people they drive past me speeding a lot of times, and they've got a phone in their hand, and so they're going to end up. I think of my two kids that are fairly young drivers, comparatively speaking, and
Yeah,
I don't want them getting hit by somebody that's distracted driving. So,
absolutely.
yeah. But cars, I think vehicles today, newer vehicles are really equipped to help us not have to do that, because you can give voice commands and things like
Yeah.
that.
I mean, cars are driving themselves now, so
Yep,
yeah, it's
yep.
crazy.
So,
I'm sure like like newer vehicles as well, I think do better in like probably crash tests and stuff, like just the way they're probably built, I feel like for just that.
Yep.
Other than excluding obviously distracted driving, what are some of the most frequent causes of accidents other than uh distracted driving?
That's well, speeding is probably one of the biggest issues. Other than distracted driving, I'd say just people getting in a hurry
Hmm.
and thinking they're running out of time or they need to get somewhere fast and puts everybody else at danger. And before you know it, they're either rear-ending somebody, running into somebody, or running a red light, running a stop sign, and plowing into another vehicle that's obeying the law. So, um, just just being in a hurry.
Yeah. Uh, are there any particular areas in Evansville that you tend to see that are like more dangerous for like traffic issues like that, or basically hot spots for places that people tend to get in a lot of accidents?
Yeah, and most of those are kind of hidden areas that you would only know if you went through it. Like here in Evansville, for the longest time, maybe it may not be that way any longer, but the longest time there was a little hidden intersection at um, Burkhart and Lincoln Avenue, and that was one that was a there was a stop sign. Lincoln Avenue had the right of way. People on Burkhart had to stop and look left to right, and they ended up making a four-way stop, which was a wise decision. But now, ironically, continuing on Burkhart, one of the places that is a kind of a hidden problem for accidents is Burkhart and Lynch Road, and then Lynch Road and Green River Road. Lynch Road and Green River Road is probably the biggest area in town, one of the biggest areas in town because there's so many
Hmm.
turns and traffic patterns that causes people issues. And so, worked an accident last night with some officers that was at Lynch and Green River. Personally, I have carried out a child out of the big ditch there after the car had been hit and went into that ditch. And um, so those are some of the hidden areas in Evansville that I think are big
Hmm.
problems.
Yeah. Uh, I know we talked about like phones and stuff, and you've been a police officer for a while now. Have you noticed any trends that have changed over time? Like, have you seen more distracted driving by via phone in recent times more than rather than like when you first started, or like what has kind of the trends that have changed over the time of being a police officer?
When I first started being in law enforcement, um, that was back in that was 13, almost 14 years ago. So you think about technology, how much it's advanced. People weren't they were into their phones, but they weren't as almost addicted to them as they are today.
Mhm.
But people get really addicted to the technology. It's like drinking or doing drugs. The more you do it, the more addicted you become to it. So it has advanced tremendously since the time that we moved back home to Evansville and got into law enforcement ministry.
Yeah. Uh, for people that are just walking the streets or pedestrians basically at crosswalks or just basically walking their dog or whatever, how safe do you think people like how often do you see people in those situations get hit by cars or like situations like that?
Most places in Evansville, I think, are pretty safe. It's a distracted driver or a drunk driver, somebody who is driving under the influence of something that causes an issue. But you look at a lot of the traffic patterns and the way roads are being, by state law, maybe even federal law, but definitely state law, how they're being resurfaced. When they resurface an area, redo a road, a lot of times they're putting in bike paths and they're putting in more sidewalk areas for people to walk. So it's really made it to where it's a lot easier, and even crosswalks for people to walk across to get to the other side safely. Um, in the neighborhood I live in Newburgh, people have signs going east and west. They're supposed to stop for people in the crosswalk. They don't necessarily do that 99% of the time, but the way it's designed now, it's designed to help and keep people a lot safer when they're walking.
Yeah. You touched on it a little bit with the bike lanes, how they've started to add more infrastructure, like making the lanes wider so there's bike lanes. When how have you like what stories do you have with cyclists on the roads? Because I know that can be a big issue in certain areas with people getting hit if they're riding bikes necessarily on their or on the road, or people I've seen a lot of videos of people with like road rage against bicycle people. Like what has been your experience with like cyclists on the road?
Um, Honestly, I think even though it's just as dangerous, it might be even more dangerous riding a bike on a road. Um, Occasionally in the spring and the summertime, um, you'll see a bicyclist get hit, but a lot of times it's not when they're not getting hit when they're on one of these newer roads
Mhm.
that's designed for, it's got a bike path on north, south, east, west lanes. Um, it's when they're out on a country road,
Mhm.
and there's two lanes. There's not. They're kind of out in the lane where all the rest of the traffic is.
Yeah.
That's where they become a problem. So out in the country is where a lot of people, I think, get hit.
Mhm. Yeah. What improvements do you, other than obviously making all the lanes wider, are there any improvements you would specifically hope to be made by Evansville with like traffic infrastructure?
I think they're really doing a pretty good job living up to code and updating standards and for the codes to meet certain for the streets to meet certain codes. You go downtown near the Ford Center, you've seen some of the uh, down by if you're going down Walnut Street. There's a lot of new colors on there down by the DoubleTree Hotel across from the Ford Center. That's all for walking and biking. So they're really trying to make it to where it's safer, it's brighter, so people see able to see people in those patterns. So I think, honestly, I think the city and the county is doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's obviously why we made the podcast to just advocate for Evansville and just get things changed that need to be changed. Uh, as a police officer, I know there are some times where you direct traffic. I know this was originally the first thing we talked about when I asked you to do this podcast. Do you have any stories of directing traffic as an officer, or any close calls? May have not, or any you've heard from buddies?
I think the officers do a really good job. Where I was just watching coming out on Easter Sunday out of church a couple weeks ago, how dangerous that job is for an officer to get out in the middle of a lane of traffic and start stopping and directing traffic. So regardless how you put it, the officer's life is in danger when they just get out there to direct traffic. Because sometimes people don't pay attention; they don't see them. Um, but I think officers do a really good job of trying to protect themselves. Probably one of the and they do a great job trying to direct traffic in those situations. One of the most dangerous jobs, ironically, if people don't think about it, is directing traffic in like a funeral procession, funeral lineup, because it's usually an off-duty officer on a motorcycle that goes in, and they have to weave in between traffic lanes and get into the middle of an intersection to stop people. And multiple times, even in our area here in Southwest Indiana, where people have been these officers on motorcycle bikes have been hit by a car when they're trying to help with a funeral procession.
Yeah, no, I would never even have thought of that, like a funeral. That's interesting. I know it's obviously can be a touchy subject, but what is it like responding to a serious car crash or something of that sort? I don't know.
Well, I think you got from my perspective, and you've got from the officer's perspective as well. Um, on your way there, you're in the squad car. You hear the call come out. You get dispatched to that scene, and you don't know really what you're coming up on. And it could be most time it's just a simple accident, and sometimes it can be pretty brutal, just to put it bluntly. And so, when you get there from a chaplain standpoint, from an officer standpoint, you're trying to tend to people who are hurt as a part or injured as a part of that accident, maybe even bleeding. You see people that have broken bones and things like that because of accidents. From an officer standpoint, you've got a clip mounted on your shoulder. You can call out for additional cars, for ambulances and things like that, and give updates to the situation. From a chaplain's perspective, you're there to help others and comfort those who've been uh, injured or who saw the accident, and it can be pretty horrific there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, just for like a common perspective, what do you wish the public understood about traffic safety that's often like overlooked or just not thought about?
Mhm. That's a good question. Well, again, I would go back to the whole distracted driving issue because I think that's one of the biggest issues we have wherever you're at in Evansville or the St. Louis area or around the country is people just being distracted drivers and telling people to slow down. That's the biggest thing that I would because then like nowadays when people get irate because things are happening, either they're in a hurry or something happens because someone's been distracted and hits them or whatever it might be, causes an accident, and then the potential there's more and more potential and things happening related to road rage. People pulling out a firearm and shooting somebody or beating somebody up or because of an accident. And so distracted driving, driving too fast, not slowing down, can lead to road rage and a whole mess of different issues.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. I think it's obviously super important for like us to make sure we're taking care of that. If you had the power, or if you could give drivers one piece of advice, just like when driving around, just kind of a send off, like what advice would you give to just the everyday driver?
um, and slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down. I was in a self-driving vehicle with a friend the other day. But you could type in the address. It was a Tesla, and you could type in the address, and it would take you where you wanted to go, and you could just sit back and enjoy the ride. And it had different levels. Are you in a hurry, or are you able to kind of slow down and just enjoy the ride or whatever? Whichever level you chose, it wasn't going to disobey the law or anything, but it stopped at intersections when it was supposed to. It let people pass when they were supposed to, and and that's from an electronic standpoint.
Yeah.
For humans need to slow down and just do the right thing as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that's all I had. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right.